Okay, we're live. Welcome to the live stream for September 6, 2017. My name is Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream we do every Wednesday night for about 3 hours. It starts 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time if you're new here. Malta is first one on. Good evening, she says. Good evening to you too. Lauren is here, Karen, Roberta, Mo. Some people are hopping on. I have all these different windows open. I don't know what is going on here. There we go. D-Mel, Truth Seeker, Rock Angel, Roberta, Angelique, Daniela, Diana, hello. And let's see. Oh, Diana, you're already a moderator in here. I was going to put you to work in here, but you're already at work in here. You just can't get a break. Everywhere you go, putting you to work. Now I can't unclick. Oh, what is going on? Chaos. So soon out of the gate. There we go. Lots of people here. Beth, Amanda, Sovri, Faith and Peace, Peter, Lisa, Corns trip. I did not say that right, I'm sure. Missouri Cowboy. Howdy. Diana says, this is my break. Oh my gosh. George says, hey. Tanitria, welcome. Sanisha says, hello, I'm a first timer. Well, welcome. Just a kind of FYI, the chat can get pretty fast, pretty quick. So there's kind of a learning curve that goes along with keeping pace with the chat. So don't freak out if it starts going fast. Maria says, Dana, I really enjoyed last week's book club. I learned so much. I loved learning the formula for how psychopaths feed off empaths. Well, I'm glad you liked it. It's a really fun thing to do the book club. And if anybody is interested in joining the book club and being on YouTube with me, you can check out my website, thriveafterabuse.com, and go to book club tab on my website, and you can find out more about what all is involved. There's not a whole lot involved. It's basically involves emailing me and then letting me know if you want to join. But it's pretty fun. Takayla says, I love your vlogs. Well, thanks. I'm glad you do. I'm trying to get in the groove of making shorter videos, or at least like cutting these up. And for some reason, I just have the hardest time with YouTube. I don't know. It's just weird. There's such a personal growth curve that comes from and because of all of this, I guess. It's weird. Like I do these videos and I get very self-conscious being on camera, and I have a hard time with it. And I have a hard time going back and watching my videos. It's much easier for me to edit like a podcast or something like that. It's just part of it, I guess. Oh, Ellen, I'm so sorry. She says, I've been getting to know a man that I graduated with. It's been nice. Saturday night, he had a heart attack and passed away. It's been so hard. How much broken heart can we take? Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. And how just out of the blue and unexpected. My goodness. Maria says, yeah, Shay and you were wonderful. And I loved reading Lucy's notes. So informative. Yes, Lucy is such a little book club gift from God. Let me just tell you, she writes the best notes and the best questions and is so detailed and has just been just like such a huge part of book club. It's really her book club, frankly. I'm just, I just film it. is really kind of what's going on. Larry says, "Hi, Dana. You look great and sound great, but I do know what you mean looking back at your own recordings. Yeah. Oh, it's so cringy. It's so cringy. But I have to remind myself, like everybody starts somewhere. And, you just, you dive in and then you just know that it's going to be super cringy. And it'll always be super cringy as you learn and progress. And it's just all part of it. So, but it's still difficult. Even knowing that, it's still difficult. Mo says, "Hi from the other side of the world. It is 2:30 in the morning here." Oh my goodness. You are a trooper. And Quentin says, "Hey, Dana from New Zealand." Wow. That's so amazing. So far away. Oh, I'm so glad. George says, "Thank you so much. You've helped me break off my abusive relationship. Your videos are an inspiration to all of us here in this chat right now." Oh, I'm so glad. Um, it's so funny. It's just really, it's one person sharing their experience. And sometimes that's all it takes to just realize that it's not you and that you're not alone. And it's enough to just have that validation, that leads to clarity in all of this. Maria says, "Dana, have you ever thought of doing Skype sessions, or do you prefer being a great therapist to a wider audience on YouTube?" Well, well, for starters, I'm not a therapist or a life coach. I'm just a woman who has a ton of experience kind of in this area in a wide variety of reasons. And I lived it. It's probably my biggest experience out of all of this. I've kind of thought about doing Skype sessions, but really what I've thought more about doing is turning the live stream into like a call-in show kind of a thing. I think that would be cool. I'd like to put together some course. I don't know. I have so many different things that I'm thinking about. I think possibly the next big thing I do besides getting these books done, which those are coming along. So that's exciting. I know that's been a long road for those of you that have been waiting for the books. But they are what the second book is. I have two books that are pretty much done, which is super exciting. So the second book just went out to three of my like quote unquote test readers. And they're just some people in the community that I've known for a while. Lucy's one of them. And they're going to read and then give me feedback and just make sure that I'm, not missing anything obvious. I don't have spinach in my teeth, basically. So they're going to be giving me some feedback. And then once that one gets back, then I have to get a cover and then get it formatted. And then that one will be done. And then I have to do the same thing for the first book. But after that, I've been really kicking around the idea of turning the support group into a nonprofit. So that's been on my heart for probably the past year and a half, because something needs to happen there. That group is so big and we have a volunteer staff. Diana is one of them that's on here tonight. And we've been rotating people kind of through there. And it's a lot. It's a lot. And everybody that's been helping admin that, they go so far above and beyond that I feel like if we could turn it into a nonprofit, then it would help us grow larger. But there's a lot of things I have to figure out with that, like how, I guess, not only like policies and procedures, but also how to do it to where it's not like a conflict of interest. If I am selling books, like doesn't seem right for me to sell books and then do you see what I'm saying? And then to have like a nonprofit, I'd have to figure out how to separate, how to be ethical about it, and even start that process. So in theory, I would really like it if the support group could kind of grow into something along the lines of like what the Alcoholics Anonymous has done as far as like their setup, where it's anonymous, it's online, it's in person, it's free, it's global, it's kind of a very like formulaic path to healing and support. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Dejoa, I know I did not say that correctly. Dejoa says, please do an audiobook. That is in the works as well. So that will happen for both of the books. So I don't know. We'll have to do a like a mini live stream when I get closer and have the mental clarity and the energy about how to turn the support group into a nonprofit and like just brainstorm ideas. Because I kind of feel like we need to start with the end in mind. And when I started that group, well, when I started, I have several support groups. And when I started them, it was more of kind of me starting what I would have felt that I needed back then. And I didn't like with all of this stuff, I didn't anticipate that so many people would be out there that would be even looking for this information or that would need it. And so I didn't have like the infrastructure in place for like this many people that have been reaching out to me. So I've been behind the ball this whole time. And, um, this is something that I do want to do with my life. So I feel like I need to get it figured out because this is what I want to do. But I also want to make sure that it's being done in a way that I have peace about. And right now I have a lot of anxiety about it because it's growing so much and I'm still riding this whole learning curve and the admins are too. And, they're so wonderful about it because we talk every single day and we're always learning, but it's a really painful way to learn. Stanley says, get a nonprofit CPA. Yeah, that would be part of it. And then we'd have to figure out, okay, how would it go? What would be ethical for, like a board of directors? We would need that. We would need like an executive director, but I'm not sure if it would be a conflict of interest for me to be either on the board or even as the executive director. But I would want to have a large say in what goes on because that's why I would be doing this. So it's just trying to navigate all that and figure out how to do it. Let's see. Maria says Shay had a book recommendation called The Confidence Game. She said it's great. I love learning how con artists work. It's great in audiobook format. I'll have to. I wrote that down. Confidence Game. It's on my list. Yes, and Shay was fantastic for book club last week. If you guys missed it, I think it's always so interesting to hear from other people outside of just me, because there's so many different people that have had such a wide range of experiences with this. And I think that, the more perspectives people have, I think the more it kind of accelerates healing and understanding. Interesting. Gamer Christina says, I reread months of old texts. I found it helpful because I didn't notice the red flags at the time when I have to think of a response, right? Reading what was said and how I responded was extremely helpful. Yeah, it really can be. That's a really great idea. I try to use things like that too. People will often email me, or I'll see things on the news or even in my own life where I'll capture screenshots of different text messages or different emails. And I try to use those as an example because it really does help for people, to not speak in such kind of abstract terms, but to really see like what this stuff looks like in the trenches, like as it's happening. Very helpful. Bear, thank you, says he posts a link along with the live stream donation. He says the greatest 9 minutes on the interwebs. It's a Medea relationship advice clip. I'm sure that's hilarious. I'll have to check that out. Yeah, Faith and Peace says the court system really needs to understand that the kind of abuse these individuals inflict. I agree. The court, I think there just needs to be a lot of work and outreach done on every single level with, teachers, with social workers, with therapists, with psychiatrists, with doctors, psychiatrists are doctors, but like I'm talking more of like medical general practice type doctors, pain clinics, um, domestic violence shelters, police, even addiction groups. I think oftentimes, these symptoms of abuse tend to present themselves in a wide variety of ways. And it tends to be chronic pain. It tends to be anxiety, depression, people calling in to work a lot, people calling into school, behavior changes, personality changes, addiction, these kinds of things. Wow, good for you. Debbie says 16 years for me, and I finally got the courage to put my home on the market. Wow. That's a big step. That's a big step. And, it can be for sure an emotional roller coaster. I think any change is difficult. We're not, as human beings, we're not wired to embrace change. We're wired to really avoid change because change is scary, and change, even if something's normal, even if it's problematic, it's still, we know what we're dealing with. And so selling your home can really bring up a lot of feelings. So if you try to prepare yourself emotionally for that as best as you can. Helene says, did anyone feel as though the narc and you had nothing in common? Morals, hobbies, general likes or dislikes? It shows just how much of an addiction it was in my situation. Well, I think it depends on the dynamic. I think there's a lot of us with who got tangled up with people that did a really great job of mirroring back to us. So we really thought we had so much in common. And then when it ends, you realize like, no, I don't even know this person, let alone have anything in common with them. It's all been an emotional con game. So let's see. Yeah, Truth Seeker says it's so creepy when you realize what they're doing. It's absolutely chilling. Yes, I agree completely. Bear says, today is my Franken ex's birthday. Looking back, I can't see why I was ever attracted to her or people like her. My life is so much better without such negativity. Yeah, it really is. It can be some time well spent to think about what was it about her that did attract you. And because it's generally how it makes us feel is the hook for most people. It's the attention, it's the affection, or maybe it's even that sense of security, um, stability. Or maybe if she was, very sexual, just those feelings of feeling wanted, feeling, needed. And the same thing goes for female targets as well. But if we can examine what was it, how were they able to hook us in, it can be really insightful because then we can see, okay, this, because it's generally some sort of vulnerability that they were able to exploit. And so if we can figure out, okay, is it because we were lonely, or, what was it? Then we can work towards, filling that vulnerability so it's not continually exploited. Sort of like, to maybe a more extreme situation, for example, you might have a person that's recently divorced or recently widowed, or who's a widower on online dating. And they might crash into an online dating scammer who takes them for a lot of money. And they think to themselves, "Oh my gosh, this was a fluke thing. I got scammed." And they get off of online dating for a while, they kind of heal, then they get back into it, and then there's a very solid chance they're going to get hooked right back in. I have an acquaintance of mine. This was exactly her pattern. And she's not naive. She's an incredibly intelligent woman, but she was incredibly lonely. And we would go out to coffee every couple months, and my heart went out to her because she wasn't seeing things that to me were very obvious. But it's always obvious to an outsider, right? Because I don't have that emotional investment because I'm not in it. She's in it. And that's why she's not seeing it clearly. So, but for her, she was so lonely that every time she experienced that love bombing from these different men, she just would fall for it, and she would fall fast, and she would fall really hard. And it was just this continual heartbreak. Every single time. It would last for about, 3 to 4 weeks. And she really felt like this is the one, he's going to be back in town soon. He's in the military, or he's an entrepreneur, or he's overseas for some reason. And they would even send her stuff like a long stem rose or a little box of chocolates. And she really thought, okay, a scammer wouldn't actually send me stuff, but they do. Like their scams they've really like leveled up. Yeah, George says, Dana, the intensity of mirroring for me was so strong, but I eventually realized that their interests and my interests were completely feigned. In fact, in reflection, they shared nothing in common with me. Yeah, it's very eye-opening when that happens. Shocking. I mean, it's just shocking because it just seems like so much energy that a person would expend for it's hard for normal, decent people to wrap our minds around why somebody would do something like that. Uh, let's see. Okay, so before I go on, I had a couple people ask me some questions. So I have the podcast. Uh, it's on iTunes. It's called Thrive After Abuse. And if you leave a review on iTunes, it is much appreciated. It's not easy to figure out how to leave a review, but if you do leave a review, I really do much appreciate it. And let me know what you think of the show. It's again another huge learning curve. And also, somebody had asked about the shirt that I was wearing last week in the comments from the chat. And this is, if you can see it, it should be backwards to you guys. I always forget. I think it's flipped. It might not be backwards looking to you on the camera, but it says, yes, you can. And it's backwards. So the purpose of that is so when you look in the mirror, then you'll see it right side, the correct way. So you'll see the message. So it's sort of like a hidden message to yourself that says, yes, you can, which is kind of cool. And there's a link to that t-shirt below. It's all these little t-shirts and cups. And this is one of the cups. It says good vibes only on one side and has the little logo on the other. All that stuff is in the Teespring store if you're interested. So, and Karen asks, what is a podcast? Oh, Karen, they are so neat. If you are into talk radio at all, then podcasts will be your most favorite thing ever. If you're not into talk radio, you probably won't like it at all. But you can find them. You can find them on iTunes, Stitcher. Is Stitcher for Android? I always forget which phone has which thing, but Anybody can have a podcast. It's so cool. So you can search for them based on topic or based on podcast name. And what it is it's like a little talk radio episode. So I turn a lot of these videos into podcasts, and then I'm going to start having like additional content that is mainly podcast only. Just I do podcasts 3 times a week. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday is when podcasts air. And it can be a great way. So like if you're driving and you want to listen to a live stream, you can go on, what iTunes or Stitcher or whatever, or even my website, and just click play, and then it'll play the podcast version. It's pretty neat. Tanitra says, Dana, I like the t-shirt. It's like a secret affirmation. Yeah, I do too. That's why I did it. I thought that would just be really fun. So, and I was kind of playing around with the font and the spacing, but I like it because it just kind of looks like gibberish to anybody else, but then to you, the message comes across, and it's just really cool. I like it. And I might be making some other shirts with different sayings on it. So if you want to see a saying that's backwards like that, let me know in the comment, and then I'll see what I can do. So I was thinking about making one that says like, find your peace, or I don't know, something like, I don't know. I'm open to ideas. Bear says, Dana, please do a shameless plug. Where do I get that shirt? It looks like a great gift. Teespring is where you can get that shirt. And there's a link down below in the description for it. And there's a handful of different shirts on there. And there's a different types of shirt styles, but I will warn you. So like my favorite cut of these t-shirts is the what is like women's baggy. It's like real, me and my drapey shirts. Like it's just real loose and drapey and very, very soft. But I will caution you to wash it in cold water and line dry it, because these things do shrink up. So just let that be said. And Missouri Cowboy says, yep, plug the mugs. I'm holding up my mug for all to see. Yeah. It's fun. It's been so fun. It's so funny how never in a million years, if you would have asked me 3 years ago, I would have told you there is no way. There are very few things I know for sure in life. But what I do know is that I will never do anything having to do with technology for a living, that I will never do public speaking for a living, that I will never do design work for a living, and that I would never write or do a podcast or do a video, because I don't even like seeing pictures of myself. So video is super cringe. And yet here I am. So just one of those things. Oh, interesting. Healer, hopeful survivor says, Dana, a wonderful saying for us empaths would be bringer of light with a raven, because ravens symbolize warrior as well as the bringer of light. That is very interesting. I'm going to write this down. Bringer of light with a raven. I'll have to play around with that and see what I can do. That's cool. I like stuff that's very like symbolic. Carol says, in the UK, I had cognitive behavioral therapy, mainly working on self-esteem, which has helped tremendously. But why do they keep insisting that no one can make you feel anything you don't want to feel? That's a great question. Oh, how to even answer this? I guess kind of maybe the short answer is that it's not so much the event itself, that makes us feel a certain way. It's more of our perception of the event and then what we do with that. But it's very normal for a person, right? If you came up to me and told me that I was stupid, fat, and ugly, I would have my feelings hurt, right? I think anybody would. However, there's kind of that initial shock to being told something that's hurtful or to go through something that's hurtful to any degree. But after that event, we can then determine. So there's this kind of metaphor, I guess, that I like that really helps me, and to think about it in terms of keeping your self-worth and your hurt feelings in two different buckets. And so if somebody does come up to me, which does happen quite a lot, like on YouTube, and they do insult me, like, and I get a whole wide range of stuff. But if they do say something, it hurts, and that's okay. It's okay for that to hurt my feelings, but it doesn't have to impact my self-worth. And to make sure that those two things stay in different buckets. And then to also realize that other person, whatever they say, it's not really defining me, it's defining them. So realizing you don't have to accept any garbage that somebody tries to spew onto you. Does that make sense? It takes practice. It takes practice not internalizing all of the junk that a person puts on you. But it's very powerful when you can get to that place. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up. People are talking about Raven. Scott says, yeah, there's the three-eyed Raven on Game of Thrones. True. You could have a t-shirt dedicated to Bran. I love that show. I'm so sad that I'm not going to be able to watch it for like 2 years. Let's see. George says, Dana, I love your podcast. Thank you for providing an unbiased gender view on narcissistic abuse. When will the mainstream public learn that abuse goes both ways? Thank you for sharing a balanced view. Well, you're so welcome. And I'm really glad that can help. There's a lot of the work that needs to be done. There really is this idea that abuse is about gender and strength, and it's not. It's about power and control. So I do my best. I definitely try to stay as gender neutral as possible, because it is important, because there are a lot of men and boys out there that have an abusive parent or that are in an abusive relationship and don't even realize it. I think it's hard enough for women to realize it, women and girls to realize it. And there is some information out there that's geared specifically towards them. So you kind of think, well, imagine what men must go through when there's really nothing out there that's geared towards them. Yeah, see, people are talking about the hurricane. Yeah, super scary stuff. I was watching a video on YouTube earlier. They had a live stream from some sort of weather cam. I think it was in the Virgin Islands that was filming it. So, man, scary, scary stuff. I hope if you guys are in the path of the hurricane, err on the side of caution. I grew up in Houston, and my father and my brother lived down there, and they were just in Hurricane Harvey. And thankfully, my father, they only had about 3 inches or so of water in their house. But, I grew up with hurricanes, and it was one of those things, like, it just wasn't, you didn't leave. You just bought bottled water, and you had canned food, and you had a generator, and you just kind of hunkered down. And this last storm, it was really terrifying. And I was on the phone with my dad when, because their whole plan was that they were going to stay and they were going to try to keep the water out. And I just don't think that they really thought that they would get water because they've never had their place flooded before. I mean, it's always been close, but it had never actually flooded inside. And I was on the phone with him when the water started coming in, and it was just the worst. It was just so scary because talking to him, it was hearing in his voice that moment of realization of this was a really bad idea and we should have left. And just hearing kind of like his voice drop, it was awful. So, please don't wait. I know that it's inconvenient and it costs money and all that, but it sounds like this hurricane's going to be a really really big one. And if you can leave, please leave. Please go someplace safe. Yeah. I saw on the news too, Diana, they were saying, and you probably know about this, but they were saying for people that have special needs, you can dial 311, and it's a special emergency line to get help in the hurricane areas for people that either have special needs or have a special needs family member that they're taking care of. Scott says, I wish there was a narcissist awareness. No one knows anything about them. I only knew because I came across an article in a magazine and was like, ding, ding, that's my friend's wife. Yikes. Yeah. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and she was saying her therapist kept referring to her mother as a narcissist. And my friend, like most people, you justify it. They're like, well, my mom had kind of a difficult childhood, and, she's difficult and she's controlling and she's demanding and she's pushy and she's rude and, she's hurtful, but it's not malicious. She's just kind of that way. Like, I don't know if I'd go that far to call her a narcissist. And it was another friend of hers. So she'd been kind of pushing back against the word narcissist or even the understanding. And it was another friend of hers that gave her, a link to a group for children with narcissistic mothers, and she said she got into that group just because she was curious, and she's like, oh my god, it's like reading my life story. And that, like you were saying, Scott, it was just this ding ding ding, wow, everything starts making sense. And I think that's how most people feel when they start getting into these different support groups. It's just so incredibly eye-opening and validating to just realize, oh, I'm not making a big deal out of nothing. This is really going on, and it's going on with a lot of people. And then you start realizing, why is it going on with so many people, and why does nobody know about it? So, okay, let's see. Yeah, Postmodern says, yeah, people who justify this really upset me. Yep, I hear you. I agree. And it's amazing the level that people can justify things to. Oh yeah, Kayla says there's a great book by Don Miguel Ruiz called The Four Agreements, which is a great book. I agree. And she says that I think everyone should read. I'm sure some of you have. It's really great. Please Google it. Yeah, it is good. Corn trip says, Dana, what state are you from? Originally, the first half of my life, I lived in Texas for about 15 years. And then I moved to Colorado. And then I married a man in the military. And then we moved all over. So then I moved to Wyoming. I lived in Italy for a while. Wyoming, Italy, California, Nevada, New Mexico. And then I live in Michigan. I live in Michigan now. Michigan is home for me now. And I love it here. But that's the thing. Like, I feel like I can't even say Michigan is home, because every time I say something like, I'm never going to, technology is not my thing, then I end up doing technology, or public speaking is not my thing, and then I end up doing public speaking. So I'm afraid I'm going to jinx myself if I say Michigan is where I'm staying. And the next thing I know, I'm going to be traveling all over. Crazy. Oh, that's great to hear. George says, Dana, I live in the UK and I stay up on Wednesdays just to watch your live stream, but it really is as therapeutic as AA. I am a member and it really does help as much as AA. A 12-step program really would help. Yeah. I think if I could kind of lay out what I would think would be helpful for 12 steps and then run it past you guys and get feedback as a group as far as I don't know. Like I said, I think we'll need to do a separate live stream video just on that. And because I don't think that I have all the answers. I think collectively we have all the answers. So I think it would be kind of cool. And I'm just talking out loud here a little bit, but I think it would be cool to have um, like a pooling of resources. So if everybody said, because like I mentioned before, even if I want to turn it into a nonprofit that I start, I don't want it to just be, first of all, I'm not, that doesn't feel ethical to me to even have my stuff in it, even though I would want it in it. Like I need to figure out how to walk that line without that feeling so gross. Um, but I think it would be really cool to have for people to say this is what helped me, and then for people to like list out resources and then compile all of that, and then maybe I can work with maybe in combination with other YouTubers. Like I know people are a big fan of Richard Grannon or Inner Integration, or I mean, there's Lisa Romano, Melanie Tanya Evans. Um, there's lots of Angie Atkinson is another one. Trying to think, there's so many that are really great that talk in this field. That for people to say like, okay, I think I really liked these certain videos; these were helpful, and then to start organizing that information and have that be part of the nonprofit, and then to also have an anonymous component where it's a group online like what AA has, but then also something in person. There is a group that started up, I want to say it's in the UK, that is on narcissistic abuse, and I need to reach out to her. I'm a little concerned about people doing in-person groups because there is a risk factor involved, and normal decent people don't think about these things. And even if they do think about these things, I guarantee you, like the stuff that I have learned with running my Facebook group, even having even doing what I do, even having the domestic violence training, even being threatened by people, even having to call the cops, I still come across stuff where I would have never guessed in a million years that that would be an issue. So I feel like it's really important that if people are going to start doing their own groups, that we somehow are able to talk to each other. Because I already have a training manual for admins for my Facebook group that I think would be really help that I would be happy to give out to people that are wanting to do in-person groups. It's just things to think about that normal, decent people don't think about until it happens to them. Yeah. Truth Seeker says, I'm concerned about in-person groups and sharing in the groups I'm in. Narcs, gang stalk. Yes. I agree. Little Miss says, I don't trust in person. Yeah. One of my concerns would be in person is if you do have a crazy ex or even a crazy member, if you've got a person that's in the group that's just a really difficult personality or they're dangerous or what have you, they know where you meet every single week. And so there's like a lot of like logistics to kind of figure out and navigate. I called AA, oh, what was it, a few weeks ago or so, and talked to the guy there, but I didn't get very far because I was kind of curious to know. I mean, they've already done this learning curve. So I would be curious to know, maybe I need to call somebody else in AA and kind of figure out how do they handle difficult members? How do they handle a lot of this stuff? So Yep. Missouri Cowboy says, yep, the predators will infiltrate and try to separate the target from the flock. Yes, they do. And we've had that happen quite a few times. As a group, as one of the admins in my group, one of the things that we're trying to do with this is, we have group rules, which is important. And it lays out all these things like trying to warn people. We highly recommend you create a fake account. This is why. There's even though we have group rules, we highly recommend that you guys don't kind of don't let your guard down in here, because it is the internet and it's on Facebook and it's attached to your account. So people can be malicious and they can be flying monkeys and you won't know. So, we try to get problematic people out as soon as we spot them, but sometimes that can be a challenge. Healing hopeful. If you can message Diana, who's in the group, she's one of the admins, let her know and give the name, and we can work on resolving that. What? Amber says the problem with faking accounts is that it's illegal in certain states. Like here in New York, you can go to jail for having a fake Facebook. What? Are you sure? I don't see how. I'd have to look that up. I don't see how that could be illegal. If it's a concern, I have a website group. So that group, you can choose your own screen name and nobody knows your real name. All I can see as an administrator of that group is I can see your email and your IP address. That's it. That's all I can see. I think it's one of these things in any group, people start up in general or attend. It's important to just have healthy boundaries and to go slow. Narc Free says, I had to turn my meetup group over to another member and opt out, even though I had started and got it up and running because of a crazy member. It's the best feeling. You got to go with your gut. Yeah. And it's the general public, and it can be really difficult. I'm a big fan of, I think if people are going to do a meetup group for narcissistic abuse, to change up the location and to have it be definitely not have it at a person's house, and to not give out last names as much as possible. I think although through Meetup, they might have that information. So this is kind of why I want to dig more into like what AA is doing and how they keep people safe. And I don't know. I think there's a lot I can learn from them. So, and that was what I was going to tell you to begin with. The start of the group, and then I forgot. I am going to Colorado tomorrow. So I'm going to be gone for about 9 days. And I have tried, long story short, I'm not going to be doing the live stream next week because I will be gone. I've tried streaming from my mom's house before and it's never worked. So I don't know if it's the walls or the internet connection or my computer or all three or what it is. So um, we're just going to, I guess, take a week off and then we'll get back to it. So I apologize for that. I'll try to post some more videos during the week to kind of make up for that. Scott, that's so true. Scott says parents' Wi-Fi is never good. Yeah, it's true. Dorado says, how about running a background check on members that want to join? Well, I mean, the thing is there's a lot of problematic people out there that have never gone to jail. And there's a lot of people that have gone to jail that have also been abused that do need help. So it's not such a foolproof thing. And I personally, I would feel more comfortable with something just being online, because then there is kind of that safety and anonymity. And it could be, it's around the clock. So I don't know. I don't know. Something needs to happen because the Facebook group it's so large, and I feel like it really needs to be broken up into possibly smaller groups. I just don't know how to kind of get that infrastructure in place, because right now it's already incredibly time consuming and there's about 10 of us that run that group. Corn's Trip says, okay, but no more than a week. Okay. Okay. Deal. I will be back. I promise. Okay. Donna says, Dana, please tell me how to stop thinking of him every minute. Tell me how to go on. What book? Audio, preferably. Oh, I'm going to throw that question out to everybody else on the chat. If you can think of a book to help with something like that. For me, a book doesn't really come to mind that necessarily addresses that. For me, it was that continual reminding myself, like I would find my thoughts kind of, wandering, like, oh, what is he up to? Or getting lost in anger, or my thoughts would wander and I would have to stop and literally like redirect my thinking. And then it would wander off again and I would have to stop and redirect. And that can be incredibly exhausting. But that's oftentimes what it is. If you can kind of get your brain going in a different direction, that can really help. So finding things that really engage your brain. Comedy can be a good one for that. Music, a good movie. For me, documentaries. Any Neil deGrasse Tyson video, I could listen to that man talk for hours. Just something that's completely unrelated to this topic to just give your brain a break. And something that's mentally stimulating. There's so many interesting videos out there about, do we live in a computer simulation? And, all kinds of really wild, interesting theories out there. So if you can kind of keep your brain busy with something like that, that can help. And I think too, maybe even visualize closing the door on him. And it takes discipline to bring your focus back to something else. And even if that, so for me, when I was going through all this, I would continually remind myself, like, the best revenge is a good life. The best revenge is a good life. And I would continually bring my focus back and I would go do something to bring that good life into focus right then and there. And even if it was something small, cleaning out the refrigerator, doing 20 jumping jacks, organizing a junk drawer, vacuuming out my car, painting my toenails, walking my dog, um, you know, something that would just take 10, 15 minutes where I was pouring all of that energy into something positive, like redirecting it. It really does help. It really does help. And then I think too, just being kind to yourself and realizing, that you've been through a lot. And part of that rehashing of things and that focusing on him is very normal. And it does tend to settle down in time. But if it's feeling unbearable right now, to kind of get a game plan in place with how can you keep your brain busy during all of this, just to give you some peace in your life. Bear says the best life has nothing to do with revenge. Yes, I agree. And really that's kind of what that whole saying is it's, you know, like us focusing on us living an amazing life. It's not to show them, it has nothing to do with them. It's to take what has happened to us and all of that pain and all of that anger and all of that hurt and to really use it as rocket fuel to get us to the next level as much as possible. But during that time, I was so caught up in that anger and wanting revenge, wanting justice, that that was the one, that was like if I felt like I was in the middle of the ocean, of a dark ocean, and I was clinging to any little thing that I could. And that was my continual kind of piece of driftwood that I would cling to, was the best revenge is a good life. Like, pour all this energy into a good life for you. You know, don't look back, look forward. Like, you're not going backwards, you're going forward. Oh, I like that. Amber. Oh, I just lost it. There it is. It says, I try to visualize cutting strings that attach me to them. I feel freer after. That's a really fantastic um, like visualization to do, is that whole kind of cord cutting thing. So you can imagine just these different energetic bonds that link all of us to all kinds of people. And if you're feeling a lot of anxiety or that connection or, these intense emotions, to think about, to slow down and just kind of breathe and think about these different cords and kind of where they're attached at, and then visualize kind of just cutting them off. And you can either send it back to the person, or you can visualize attaching a balloon to it and then just sending it back up to God or up to the universe or up to something positive, or kind of whatever brings you peace, I think, with it, really. George says, yeah, Dana, treating narcissistic abuse as an AA type program as a nonprofit would work. I could see it very much being as successful as an AA recovery program. Yeah, I agree. I think so too. There's definitely a huge need for it. I think I don't know, the biggest challenge is going to be kind of figuring out like if we were to do 12 steps, like what those steps would be, or what kind of information we would want to put out there, or like, I don't know. There would just be lots of things to figure out. I will be curious. Like I said, my first two books are going to be out. I am anticipating probably middle of October. September, yeah, middle of October. And I will be curious to know what you guys think of them. So, and then I would be curious too to kind of hear, just in general, like what's helped you the most heal? Like what's given you the most aha moments or the most insight? Or is there a technique? Did you do EMDR? these kinds of things. So I think all of us combined have the answers to this. Oh, it's so true. Maria says, I've heard live the good life for years until I learned assertive communication, boundaries, saying no, living self care. My life would never be complete. There is no substitution for life skills. Yes. Yes. And that's really what the good life is an authentic life. And an authentic life comes from knowing you. It comes from knowing yourself and what you like and what you don't like and what gives you energy and what drains you of energy and what environments are kind of your right kind of soil in which to survive and thrive, and which environments are toxic for you, and learning to pay attention to to tune into your emotions and kind of what healthy boundaries are, and what self-care is. And the second book that's coming out is all about it's about all of these concepts. So like the first book is about all of the common terminology surrounding narcissistic abuse. The second book compares and contrasts a lot of the terms with like commonly misunderstood terms. So like the difference between self care and like selfishness, or the difference between love and love bombing, or sincerity and intensity, or there's so many. There's probably like 40 or 50 different things that I've compared and contrasted. The difference between a person being a friend and a person being friendly, a person, a parent, the difference between a parent and a predator, the difference between boundaries and fortressing. That's another one I see people, myself included, get caught up with, where if they've never had boundaries before, and then they start realizing, oh my gosh, yeah, people have been steamrolling over me for years and I never realized it. I just was feeling very resentful because they just kept taking and taking advantage of me and taking me for granted and all these things. And I kept giving and giving and giving. And then once they do discover boundaries, then they tend to take it to an extreme, which is fortressing, which is to keep everybody out and to become very aggressive very quickly when a boundary has been crossed. And frankly, I think oftentimes fortressing is a very normal step in, it's like kind of getting your sea legs with setting boundaries. So a lot of people do, they tend to go, they went really extreme this way with being kind of an overgiver, and then they tend to go really extreme the other way, where people, they want to keep everybody out and they become really aggressive and hostile. And so it takes a little while to kind of find that middle ground with being able to be assertive with other people and early on, and not jump to being aggressive. So much of this stuff just takes practice too. Oh my gosh, yes. Postmodern says the worst thing is when a narcissist learns the psychological language and then they use it against us, especially if you have somebody that's not familiar with this stuff. So, they could say, and I think my guess would be is that a lot of therapists or that mental health clinicians of any mental health worker in general has had this, if they've ever been in an abusive relationship, has had this used against them. I know I did. It was sort of like, Dana, no, you're you're into like psychiatric nursing, you're in this field, many of your patients, they're sociopaths and very personality disordered and mentally ill people. You just see problems where problems really aren't because you work in it every day. And that was enough to really kind of make me question, like, maybe it is me. Because yeah, all day long I'm sitting there like assessing people for signs and symptoms of something, you know And I had a lot of friends that were therapists there too. And it was this, and so many of them had also been in abusive relationships. And I think it was for the same reason of, you get this abusive person that's like, you're a therapist. So you just, you're so busy focusing on like what's wrong or trying to fix people. And it's just this, it messes with the person's mind on like an epic level. And then of course too, yeah, you do have people that are abusive. Like Gary was saying, he said, I was married to a narcissist who makes her living as a therapist. So talk about using it against you. Yeah. And then you do have people that are actually therapists or what have you, that uh, do make it like, well, I know so much more than you because I am a therapist or I am in this field. And, you know, and then it's kind of the ultimate crazy making, because it's like, well, then who am I to argue with a therapist? And a therapist can't be abusive, right? And it really takes a person a while to kind of see through it. Postmodern says, Dana, your bangs are in your eyes. I know, they're at that awkward bang growing out stage. I'm vowing to I'm gonna grow them out this time. I keep cutting them because I can't handle this stage, but gonna push through. Yeah, Little Miss says, you are just hyper vigilant. I swear a narcissist came up with that word. Shake my head. Yep. I think when somebody tells you or minimizes how you're feeling or how you're perceiving events, that's a red flag, because none of us are in another person's body. So we don't know. Like, we don't know how they're feeling, how they're thinking, um, what have you. Only they know that. It's that's sort of like this, what we were talking about earlier, is the person's feelings are a person's feelings. And, like, for example, I might be able to joke around with my friends in a certain way, but if I were to joke around with my mother like that, she probably wouldn't appreciate it. And she'd probably have hurt feelings and think I was being really rude, because we just don't have kind of that same sense of humor on that level. But because I know that, I would never joke with her about that. I wouldn't keep trying to push what I thought was funny onto her and then blame her for not thinking it was funny. I had mentioned was it last live stream, my brother and I did that once. And my mom was so upset. We were joking around, running around the house, imitating the church lady from Saturday Night Live. This was like 20 years ago, imitating the church lady. And we just kept saying, oh, could it be Satan? And my mom would just go through the roof. She was getting so mad. And it was so hilarious to us. This is like before she even came in the room. We were just cracking up, laughing. We just got on a roll with it. And then the fact that my mom was getting so upset was even funnier. But, now I was a teenager back then. I would never joke with my mother like that now, because it's not funny to her. So even though it's hilarious to me, it's not to her. And so I would be a jerk like if I didn't kind of respect that boundary. So, it's nobody else gets to decide if you can't take a joke, or if something isn't funny or is funny or whatever. If it's not funny to you, it's not funny to you. And if it hurts your feelings, it hurts your feelings. It doesn't matter what the other person thinks. And a normal person would see that, and they're not going to try to argue that point. George says, Dana, the aha moment for me was your red flag series. A book about that would be really helpful. That's probably will be the next book that I write. So many books. I have so many books that I want to write. Another one of the books I'm planning on writing is dating after narcissistic abuse, and kind of things to look out for, and where I see a lot of people, again, myself included, where I see a lot of people stumble and begin to second guess themselves. And so I want to do a book about basically staying safe for men and for women, just kind of how to go about online dating. Because if a person was in a relationship, they were online dating 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, and they're now starting up again, it's very different now than it was back then. Let's see. Elbaz says the book on dating would be short. She says, dating? No. The end. Terrifying. Oh gosh. People are asking about online therapy. And I will tell you, it depends on the person. And I think it depends on the therapist. So I know right before I quit my job as a nurse, as a psychiatric nurse, we had just moved to doing telepsych. And it was really interesting. It was like, man, the future is here. So we would have people come into a room, and it was like a Skype screen with a psychiatrist. And, you know, that would be their session. Very interesting. So I think it just depends on what you're comfortable with and kind of who the treatment provider is and how you feel about it. Uh, let's see. Amber says, Dana, yes, a book on narcissistic parents would be good too. Yeah, I have a great title for a book about toxic families, and so that is another one of the books that I want to write. The book, I will tell you what the title of that one is going to be called. I was so tickled when I thought of it because I just thought, oh my God, I really like that. It's going to be called Eggshells and Elephants: Life Inside of a Toxic Family, because that's really what it is. Eggshells and elephants. So I am getting better with writing. I was thinking the other day, I'm like, man, I tell you, like this would make for a really interesting YouTube channel in and of itself. Just kind of the process of going through writing a book and to getting it published, really the behind the scenes of a lot of what I do, because it's like not that it's so interesting, because it's really not, but I think people, we all have an idea of how something actually happens, and it tends to be very different than how it actually happens. And I think sometimes seeing the behind the scenes process of it, and all of the confusion and the doubt and the frustration and the overwhelm and this kind of emotional roller coaster that goes along with it, can be very validating for people that are writing a book. And I'm in several writers groups, and so many people, they look around at people that are further down the road than them, and they think, man, they're lucky, or they just had it easier, or they're just a better writer. And it's so easy to think that it's us, that we're somehow deficient and that we'll never get to where they are. And then realizing, no, nobody starts out at the finish line. We all start out somewhere, and to continually, to ideally surrounding yourself with people who know more than you do is a great way, like a great way to get anything done, because there's such a wealth of information. And so I'm continually asking questions to my writers group, and I learn a handful of things every single day. And Diana says, oh, I can give you some horror stories for eggshells and elephants. Yeah. Yeah. I think, and maybe that would be a good way for us to do that book. There's so many ideas I have. So many ideas I have. One of them is I would like to do, uh, I think, some sort of like community. Bear and I were talking about this a while back, but like a collection of stories. And oh, thank you, my hero. Thank you so much. A glass of seltzer water, just my favorite thing to drink in the whole wide world. And I was out. That was a very nice surprise. What was I saying? Oh, to have a book that is more of like a community project where it's everybody's stories, but then have the proceeds from that book go towards funding something. Like, it doesn't feel right to me if I were to be like, yeah, let me take everybody's story and then I profit from the book. I'm not saying that that's wrong. I know other people have done that, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I think there's definitely a need for this information, and compiling stories and publishing and a book cover and getting an editor and all of that, it's expensive and it's time consuming. So please don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking anybody if that's your plan, but I kind of think that it would be cool for us to put together a book, and here's what would be cool too, would be to put together a book and then to have it be like, okay, 100% of the proceeds of this book are going to go into this pot. And in this pot, we're going to collect, and then we'll vote. Maybe we'll have like different things where it could go to. So maybe translating the book into a different language, or some sort of, I don't know, putting together additional information or something. We'll figure it out. Then we can vote on it. And then I'll be totally transparent with the accounting so you guys can see. I think it just would be fun. It'd be fun to see like how much did this book sell? Like, what were the book sales? What, like, minus expenses, which I guess would really be just probably taxes at that point. There wouldn't really be much because it's all online. So people could see. And then I just think it'd be a lot more interactive. So, oh, I love that. Missouri Cowboy says, funding a hobbit village. A hobbit village as a recovery refuge for narcissistic survivors. Yeah, I love it. I think you would like Missouri Cowboy. There was an architect. He actually wasn't even an architect. Let me look it up real quick. If you Google mushroom houses in Michigan, they're in Charlevoix. Let's see here. Okay, I'm going to put the link in the live stream. So one of the pages that came up, which I think these are vacation rentals, but you can see pictures online. If you go mushroomhouses.com, it was a guy who built all of these houses quite a while ago, and they're all very hobbity looking houses. They're so clever and so creative, and his story is just so cool. He was a guy who wanted to build houses, and so he was a student, he was an architecture student, but he didn't like it. He felt it was too stifling, and he just wanted to be creative. And so he dropped out, and he actually married a gal who was an oil painter. And so he would tell her his vision, and she would paint it, and then he would approve it. And they would take these paintings to different builders and say, we want to build this. And they would build these really clever homes. So I don't know. The whole story is just very inspiring, very fun. But yes, point being, I think it would be fantastic to have some sort of retreat where, that we could have some sort of retreat like on an annual basis. I would love that. Love, love, love that. And I would love it to be off the grid, would be so much fun. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Who knows what the future has in store. George says, Dana, regardless of whether or not if you profit from the book, if you help save the future of people's lives, it doesn't matter. I honestly compare you to the narcissistic abuse equivalent of Bill W. from AA. Well, thank you. And that means a lot. But here's another cool thing is the story of the guys that started AA. For those of you that don't know, this is what's so cool to me is because you just never know. We all kind of think that, well, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's not other people, but I think a lot of people tend to walk around thinking, who am I to be doing this? Like the guy that built the mushroom houses, he had this vision, but I'm sure there were so many people out there that thought, who is this guy to be doing this? He's not an architect. He's not a builder. He's just kind of this crazy guy with this really crazy vision. And the same thing with the guys that started AA, one was a stockbroker and one was a surgeon. And they had this driving passion and desire to get sober and to make their life work. And they began going around talking to other people that had gotten sober and were like, what did you do? Because everything that they had tried wasn't working for them. And over a period of time, they refined their process until they got it down to what we now know as Alcoholics Anonymous. And what's so cool about that is not only did they start this program, not only did they make it nonprofit, I think their whole mission statement and the way they've been able to like execute their idea, it works. And it works. It's such a good system that wherever you go in the world, any AA meeting is very similar to any other AA meeting in the world. And it's not just AA, it's NA, it's OA, it's any type of anonymous type meeting. It works. And, it keeps to the core of their mission, which is what I think would be important, what I would want with a group like if we were to do something like this. Not if, when. When we do it. It's just a matter of time. It'll happen. Truth Seeker says, how does Alcoholics Anonymous stay anonymous? Well, people go into a group and they'll say whatever name they're comfortable with. So like, hi, my name is, I think most people are honest about their first name, but they'll say like, hi, my name is Dana. And people will say, hi, Dana. And they might say, I'm an alcoholic. And then they kind of go into, if they have a little introduction or whatever. The anonymous part is, it's this understanding of, if you see somebody out in public or like you don't go home and tell your family, you would never guess who I saw tonight in the meeting. I mean, there is no guarantee. And I'm sure people do talk. If you lived in Hollywood and there were celebrities in an AA meeting, I'm sure people would go home and say, oh my goodness, guess who I just saw in my meeting, even though you're not supposed to, but people do, I'm sure. So it's not a fail-safe thing, but it's the premise is supposed to be anonymous. Missouri's talking about setting up a 501c3. Yeah, that would be part of it. And from what I can gather, from what I have looked into it, we would need policies and procedures. We would need an idea of board members and, just kind of like a manual for what we would want to have happen. And I think that's kind of where I would like everybody else's input is I have an idea of what I would like to see, but I think it would be really helpful to, you know, for us to all talk about it and think about what the ultimate vision would look like or would not look like. And then to kind of just reverse engineer that. And then I think it would be fun too to kind of have that process be very open so people can follow it just because it would be fun. I don't know. To me, maybe it's just me. Like, I don't know. I think that would be interesting. Oh, interesting. D says, Dana, have you ever seen Enemy of the State? I have. Oh, no, I have not. Gene Hackman's character lived off the grid. He lived in a house that he called the Jar. It's a brilliant film, and there's a lot of gaslighting in it. Interesting. I will have to check it out. I have not heard of that, but I love Gene Hackman. He's probably one of my all-time favorite actors. It would be fun to create. That's another thing that's on my bucket list is I would love to build a somewhat like off the grid house, probably here in Michigan. I have all kinds of ideas. I got to start taking vitamins so I can live a long time to get all these ideas going. Okay, let me scroll down, see what's going on here in the chat. Inner Fire is here. Welcome. Welcome. Huh. Maria says they're talking about the other. She says the other day I heard the movie The Matrix is a documentary, not a movie. Yeah, I was watching a YouTube video the other night about the world that we live in being a simulation and kind of like why that would be and what that means and just very, very interesting. Interesting. Physicists are interesting people. I probably don't even understand half of what they're saying, if even that, but it's interesting all the same. Yeah, there's a lot. Missouri Cowboy saying, yeah, we could do sanctuaries with helping people. There's so much I would really enjoy doing. Another program, I guess for me, I look to see like what other people have done that already works that we could somehow apply. And so another program that I think has shown to really work has been kiva.org, if you're familiar with that. And it's a program where it started by a father and a son who traveled overseas, and they went to, I forget where, but it was some small village. And they realized that these villagers were basically slaves. And they somehow got to talking to them and figured out that these people were basically being forced to work really long hours under terrible conditions to repay all of this debt, and that they owed this money to this one family or this one guy. And so the guy was thinking, oh my goodness, it must be like this really large amount of money, and kind of come to find out that it wasn't. It was maybe a couple $100, but the interest rate was sky high, and they only were making like $2 a day. And he's like, at this rate, they're never going to repay this amount of money. And so he told them, he's like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pay off this loan for you, but now you owe me. But here's how we're going to do this. Like, it's going to be at a reasonable interest rate. It was like 6% interest, and it was over, I forget how many years. Like, it was totally doable. And his whole thing was, I believe in a hand up, not a handout. And so now that program has grown to where they do these like what they call micro loans to different entrepreneurs in kind of developing countries. It's such a cool idea. And so people can go on there and they have kind of like a little mini business plan where they might say, a guy might go on there and say, I want to sell chickens at the market to support my family. Or a woman might go on there and say, I want to sell oranges, or hats or dresses or kind of whatever they might make. And they need, $300 in order to afford the supplies or the chickens or, what have you. And this is kind of their plan. And so then people can individually fund them. So they might say, I really like this family or this guy seems like like a hardworking, honest, good guy. I'm going to fund him. I'm in for $25. So it's kind of like a little mini Kickstarter, but it's a loan. And so then people can put money towards them. And then once it gets funded, they get that lump sum. And then they have a certain amount of time in which they have to pay it back with a minimal amount of interest. It's just cool. So that could be something too, to help people that are starting over again, that maybe don't have credit or, a poor work history or what have you. Hummus Hero says chickens are creatures, not property. I agree. 100%. I was just kind of using some examples of what they do. But yes, I agree. Let's see. Somebody was asking about. Oh, Shiraz says, my therapist was shocked and happy that I knew what the control wheel and abuse cycles were and amazed by all my journaling. I can imagine. Yeah, that's good. Good for you. It's powerful stuff. Knowledge is power, but it's truly the application of that knowledge is where the power is at. And it sounds like you are applying it. So that's exciting. Okay, let's scroll up here. That's interesting. Truth Seeker says animals were the first to teach me to trust my gut. I think that can definitely be a big sign. We call them with animals, we're like, oh, it's their animal instincts. But people have them too. And our gut instincts are kind of our animal instincts. And it's such a strange thing because so many of us, we're not taught to pay attention to them. If anything, we're really separated from them from a very early age. And then we kind of wonder like why our life doesn't work. And it's because we're so separated from that really key part of ourself that warns us like when there's danger and fear and all of these emotions that are unpleasant, but they're designed to keep us safe. Yes, Angelique says it's called the second brain and it's in our stomach. Yes. And that's another, if somebody's looking for some documentaries to watch, that's some more really fascinating stuff is on kind of our gut instinct and second brain and how they're finding what scientists first believed were chemicals that were only found in our brain are now they're finding are actually being released in our stomachs and our kind of digestive tract as well. I guess it's more in our digestive tract and not our stomach, but interesting. It's a game changer. When you think about like what we eat really does have a huge impact on mood. Carol says, Dana, have you read anything about the polyvagus nerve? The vagus nerve in general, yeah, is super amazing. I don't know about, let me make sure we're talking about the same thing. Polyvagus, huh? Is it the same thing as vagus? I think it's the same thing. Maybe? Yes? I will look into it to see if it is the same thing. Polyvagus versus vagus. The vagus nerve is a nerve that basically runs from our brainstem down to the colon, and it touches every single organ, pretty much every single organ, all the way down. And so there really is this kind of mind body connection. So when we're sensing something, generally like in our limbic system, so that more like emotional part of our brain, then in our more like reptilian part of our brain, it sends these signals down through the vagus nerve into our body. And so when we're having these like visceral responses, the word visceral comes from the word viscera, which means organs. So we're truly having this organ response. So you might feel nauseated, or what would be another one? You don't feel good is generally what it is. Like, you don't feel good, and it's generally because of all the adrenaline that's going through a person's system when something makes them feel fear. It's your body getting into that fight or flight mode. Okay, Rainey says, please help. How do we deal with revictimization by flying monkeys? I'm incredibly angry and frustrated by the gaslighting and projection, not to mention triangulation. Oh, that's so difficult. I think, one of the best ways is to go gray rock with them. So to become as emotionally disengaged and even physically disengaged as possible. And if you can block them, if you can steer clear of them, that is one of the best ways to do it, is just avoiding these people altogether and realizing you don't have to justify or argue or defend or explain your point, because they're not going to get it. They've all been manipulated. And it is crazy making. This is kind of one of the reasons why a support group can really be helpful, is you can get that validation and everything there, because the flying monkeys can be incredibly draining and exhausting. Yeah, Amber was saying, yeah, it's interesting. The body remembers. They say people who get transplants sometimes take on characteristics of the original donor. Yeah, it's very interesting how that works. And yeah, how our body stores, I don't know, just stores certain kind of personality type traits. We think it's all us, that it's our personalities, kind of more of like our consciousness that's outside of ourself. But then it's so weird because, yeah, there have been all these cases of organ donation where a person might get a person's eyes or their liver or a lung, and they all of a sudden now they have the same they have a love for baseball, or they have some sort of like interest. They love Chinese food, or they really enjoy exercising, or they just take on character traits of the original donor. That's an interesting question. Hummus says, do you have any tips for reducing our dependency on the ego? Well, I don't know I guess my initial question would be is, I'm not sure if my understanding of your question is actually, if we're on the same page. So let me answer it how I am thinking that what you're asking, but if I'm way off base, then you tell me, okay? Um, so for me, I think a lot of getting like reducing our dependency on the ego, like a person has to kind of build up a healthy ego before they can transcend it. And I think like with Buddhists, that's kind of the whole goal, is to kind of transcend the ego. And um it's oftentimes, I think, a kind of a daily practice, and it's a lifelong journey. Uh, so I guess for me, there's a lot of that kind of transcending ego kind of stuff that's always just been fascinating for me. Is is watching a lot of videos on Buddhism. There's a gal who I absolutely adore. Her channel is called The Enthusiastic Buddhist, and she really does a great job. Even if a person's not interested in becoming Buddhist, she still has a lot of really great videos on mindfulness and kind of what different principles of what Buddhists believe. So like the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, these kind of Buddhist precepts, which are it's more of a philosophy. Like a person can still keep, if you're a Christian or if you're a Muslim or what have you, you can still have your own religion and kind of draw from the different philosophies that are within Buddhism without becoming a Buddhist. So that might, if you're wanting to explore that, I would encourage you to maybe start with her channel. She, I think, also has a group, and she's a Buddhist nun, actually, and a very interesting lady from what I can tell. There's also another YouTube channel out there that I enjoy for long drives. If you're into this kind of stuff, which I was saying earlier, like if you either like talk radio or you don't. I don't know if there's anybody that's kind of in between on that. But there's another channel out there that I really enjoy if you're interested in kind of enlightenment or these kinds of things. And the channel is called Buddha at the Gas Pump. And it's a guy who interviews different people that kind of claim to be enlightened, and they share their stories, and it's very interesting. Hummus says, okay, I like your take. And what is that channel again? And yes, all religions have noble aspects. Mindy's channel is called The Enthusiastic Buddhist. And the other one is called Buddha at the Gas Pump. Both of them you might enjoy. Mindy really does a great job of breaking down Buddhism and answers a lot of questions about kind of enlightenment and who Buddha was, and kind of why they believe certain things and why certain precepts are helpful. It's at a minimum, I think it's very interesting. And Maria says, yeah, meditation is great for anxiety and quieting that monkey mind to hear finer things that you need to learn. Yes, it really, really is. And there's a lot of channels out there too for anybody that's interested on YouTube that are like guided imagery, guided meditation, um, you know, um, kind of relaxation music, these kinds of things. Jason Stevenson is a good one. Michael Seeley. Those are probably my two favorites that I listen to. If anybody's interested, it can be a great way, especially the guided imagery ones. So if you're finding yourself like the gal earlier tonight was talking about, she's having a hard time shifting her brain out of thinking about what happened and about her ex and all of these things. Guided imagery can be really great because you don't have to, there's a lot of effort that has to happen sometimes for us to meditate, or to, even like I was saying, like trying to continually like shift your focus back to, or just to something else completely. Like that can really be exhausting for a person. But that guided imagery can be so great because all you have to do is just lay there and listen, and they'll take you on a journey to relaxation. And there's not so much mental effort that you have to exert, and it can be really great. That's a good point. George says, Dana, AA rooms aren't a failsafe. Most people, out of respect, retain anonymity because everyone is there for the same reasons. But, like a narcissist abuse type group would work and it would be as therapeutic as AA. I could see it addressing codependency. In the AA model, they have groups out there called CODA. It's Codependence Anonymous is what it stands for. And those groups can be really great with dealing with boundaries. But again, it all kind of goes back to those groups are more geared towards, addiction, addiction in general, and boundary setting. So it can still be really helpful. Just kind of replace addict with abusive person. It's a lot of the same type of dynamics. So a person can still get a lot of benefit out of it. Yeah. And then there's the challenge of if I were to do a support, there's just a lot of questions that I would have answered that I need to get answers to. Like if I were to do a group, could I don't think I could call it, like Narcissistic Abuse Anonymous. Like I think that the whole anonymous thing is their gig, and I would be stepping on some toes if I did that. So, and I'm not even sure where that line is. Like if I would have trouble if I were to do like 12 steps or kind of what would be crossing the line of what they're doing. I just need to sit down and write it all out. So what needs to happen? Kevin says, that's a really good question. He says, is AA one of those things people can be court ordered to do that changes the dynamic if there are people that don't want to be there? And yes, a person can be court ordered to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I used to work in a group home with teenagers, and it was this alternative to juvenile hall. And so we took the kids every single week to either AA or NA meetings, and they didn't have a choice. Like it was just part of the program that they were in. And, even though we had, roughly six kids with us at all times that didn't want to be there, 6 teenagers that didn't want to be there. So, they're all like arms crossed, they're slumped over, they don't want to be there. I don't know if it really changed the dynamics too much. I feel like a lot of the people in the meetings there could relate to their feeling of not wanting to be there and kind of empathized with them. So I don't know. I don't know if it really changed the dynamic a whole lot. I'd be curious to know what with people that were going to the other adults that were going to the AA meetings thought about that. I don't know if people would be court appointed to go to any meetings that we would have. That might be a game changer. The challenge with doing something like this kind of a support group is because you're dealing with abuse and you're dealing with potentially very violent and unpredictable people. So that's where it's kind of a game changer and would be kind of scary. Maria, I love what you say. She said, Maria, when I focused on those things, some of my addictions went away. You never kill a habit, you only replace them. I agree completely with that. There's that saying that the universe abhors a vacuum. And whenever we get rid of something, whether we realize it or not, we do replace it. And this is oftentimes where you'll find people, they might quit smoking, but then they start eating more, or they, quit drinking, but then they start smoking. And there's kind of this saying that addictions tend to run in threes. And I think that's oftentimes why, is because it's really hard for a person. If a person quits doing something, then whatever it might be, even if it's an abusive relationship, if they quit that and they don't fill that void, then they're left sitting there thinking, it's sort of like if you quit smoking and you're like focused on, I'm not going to have a cigarette. I'm not going to have a cigarette. I'm not going to have a cigarette. I don't want to have a cigarette. I need to quit smoking. I don't want a cigarette. And like all you're thinking about is not smoking. And but you're still thinking about smoking. And it's the same thing with alcohol. It's the same thing with drugs. It's the same thing with an abusive partner. But it really does help to fill that void and to focus on something positive. This is another reason I'm a huge fan of meetup.com and finding groups out there that are so positive, where you're not sitting at home thinking like, don't text him, you can do better. You got to get out there. Don't text him. You're so focused on staying away from this person that, instead of, it's so much easier to be like, you know what, I'm going to fill my time with kayaking, or I'm going to join a writer's group, or I'm going to join a cooking group, or, I encourage people, join like a dozen or more different meetups and go to as many as you possibly can and just fill up that time to fill that void. It really does make that transition period so much easier. And then once that pull, those cravings stop, you're filling it in a much more positive way. And then it's just easier to deal with the emotions as they surface. It's really difficult, I think, when a person first leaves a narcissistic relationship to deal with all of those emotions right away. I mean, a person generally is pretty raw with pain, and they kind of just need to breathe and vent and be heard and get out of their own head and take a break and, go watch some comedy, go take some time for self-care. Even though you might not feel like it, it's still really helpful to just switch gears, because this can feel so incredibly overwhelming. Okay, let's see. Bonnie says, my grown kid. Oh, where did it go? Cha-cha-cha. I lost it. Oh, Missouri Cowboy. Thank you for the live stream donation. He says, feeling means you're dealing, which means you're healing. For Kevin. I like that. Hummus Hero asks, are you a family therapist, a psychologist, or a psychiatrist? I am none of the above. I am a former teacher turned domestic violence advocate turned psychiatric nurse turned like a woman who's gone through several narcissistically abusive relationships and decided to start a blog and a YouTube channel. So I'm actually about halfway through with my master's in counseling, but I dropped out when I started doing all of this because I realized, I think in large part, I didn't want to do one-on-one counseling. I wanted to do kind of more of like a general educational outreach, advice, advocacy thing. I don't know. I should probably just go back and finish it. Hummus Hero says, I was court ordered to go to substance abuse counseling. It was a wake-up call. I have not had a drink in 9 years now. That's awesome. Good for you. And I could imagine that there's probably a tremendous amount of validation and I think too with the kids when we were working in that program. So let me just back up a little bit with kind of who I am and what I've done. For like the past 20 years, I've worked in trauma or crisis in one way, shape, or form. I worked with at-risk kids. I taught 7th grade at-risk kids. I worked with a juvenile hall program. I've worked with, domestic violence survivors. I just, my passion has always been kind of education and outreach. So, and so if you hear me talk about that, and I was a psychiatric nurse for a while and worked with people that were either chronically mentally ill or mainly or personality disordered. So that's what that's about. But um, I would think, kind of back to your situation, going and sitting in a group and being court appointed to go into a group, I think that would be incredibly powerful and very eye opening, hearing stories of other people. And it's, to me, even being a fly on the wall in those different AA and NA meetings and people talking about their experiences and the emotional roller coaster of it and different aha moments. It's powerful stuff. Those meetings are just such a wonderful gift. And I love that they're free and that they're worldwide. Okay, this Bonnie, here's your question. It says, my grown kids want to go out to dinner for my birthday, but I really don't want to go with my narc husband. The grown kids be mad if I don't let the narc go. I am sad and torn. Are you guys married? I guess would be my first question. And you know, that's kind of a tough one. If you're married, yes, okay, yes, you're married. You could maybe say something like, depending on how much your adult children know, you could say, you know what, me and your father are doing our own thing later on. Like, we're going to celebrate in our own way. Or um, I would really just enjoy a nice lunch with you kids. And maybe if you could plan it when your ex is working. I don't know. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Bonnie says, yeah, he uses them as flying monkeys. I guess it depends too on more context, kind of what is the dynamic that you have with your children? Do they understand that he's abusive or that things are tense between the two of you? Do you have the kind of relationship where you could say to your children, I would just love to spend time with you guys today, and that, your father and I are going to do something later on. And then that way they're not feeling like they're being kind of put in the middle or, um, yeah, difficult. Okay, let me scroll up here. Inner Fire says, Dana, I'm curious how people in your personal life react when you tell them what you do. Like, how does it go over with these people when you talk about narcissistic abuse and all of this? That's a big question. Well, oh, I don't think a lot of people, I think there's very few people in my life that are like truly supportive about it. I think there's a lot of family members that I have that are nervous about it. I think when my books come out, it's going to probably even though I don't talk, the examples I give in my books aren't, some of them are my life, but they're all like anonymous examples. So I'm not calling anybody out or anything, but I think it's still going to really rock the boat big time. Um, and when I was a psychiatrist, excuse me, when I was a psychiatric nurse, I used to work with the agency we worked with. There was a handful of us nurses, and then there was, quite a few therapists, probably 40 or so therapists. And I had tried talking to a handful of them at first about this, and I really got like a lot of like the cold shoulder. And it was very much this attitude of, what do you know, kind of a thing, which was incredibly invalidating and frustrating and infuriating. Because the reality is, I have a ton of domestic violence training, and I've worked in crisis and trauma for many, many years. And just because I'm not a therapist doesn't mean that I don't know anything. So, I wouldn't say it's been really warmly received. Um, and it's been a challenge moving forward. I mean, the cool thing is I've met quite a few therapists, and I don't know, I guess it's like you find your own tribe kind of a thing as you move forward. So I've found there's been quite a few therapists that have reached out to me that, or like, I love what you do. I refer many of my clients to you. Or they're here because they've gone through abuse. And so I found a lot of like more of like my people that really support me in doing YouTube. But there was this transition period where I had a lot of friends that were in abusive relationships, and and you guys probably have experienced the same thing, where you kind of realize that a lot of people don't want to hear this. And so you start using words like even abuse, but like narcissist or sociopath or what have you. And people get really defensive, and they're like, well, how you can't diagnose them and you don't know. And then kind of realizing, like, let's just shift the language. Like, a person acting sociopathic is still a problem. Like, they don't have to be diagnosed as a sociopath in order for that to be a problem. So I don't know. It's been a learning curve with how I kind of frame all of this. And then, uh, yeah. But frankly, I think had I gone on to do any type of thing, if I had quit my job to just be a writer and to write fantasy, right? Like I want to write the next Game of Thrones or something. I still think there's always going to be people out there that just are your haters, that don't support you, that'll tell you all the reasons that why you can't be doing this. Even in the writers group, actually, this is probably a very good example. Even in the writers group, people are like, do I need to go back and get my master's in creative writing? And do I need to go back and get an English degree? Or do I need to, there's this feeling of like, I'm not enough the way that I am. And so I just need to get more and more degrees in order to feel validated. But it's like with writing, it's like with, anything else. It's, you either, it's a craft, and like you cultivate it and develop it. And if you're speaking from a place of like your personal experience and your authenticity, then to me, there's no issue. Uh, and obviously the goal of this channel and what I do is it's not about getting people to try and diagnose anybody. It's about us and our journey and understanding what it's abuse. And this is one of the reasons too, I do talk so much about behavior instead of labels, because labels, they do change, and people do get really hung up on them. And even if I did finish my master's degree in counseling, I for sure then wouldn't want to be like, yes, your partner is a sociopath. Like, you still don't want to diagnose a total stranger. So It's the behavior that's the most important. I hope all that makes sense. And I'm in a YouTube group too, Inner Fire, because I know that you have your own YouTube channel. And I think there's a handful of people on here that do as well. It's a, again, it's like one of those things that people think starting a YouTube channel is going to be one way and then it ends up being very different. And it's so easy and normal to get discouraged and depressed and to kind of, look around at what other people are doing and to feel inferior or, so that feeling of like maybe there's something wrong with me. Like it's just, I don't know. There's a lot to it. So it's hard. It can really take a toll on a person's self-esteem with doing all this. And if you can find people that are trying, I think being creative in whatever way in going against the grain. If you're 40 years old or 50 or 60 or 70 or whatever, and you decide, you know what, I really want to go build mushroom houses, like these little hobbit houses in wherever in Oregon, like that's really what I want to go do. There's going to be no shortage of people out there that are going to tell you that you can't do that. Or even something that's not so unconventional as that. If you decide, you know what, I've always wanted to become an architect. I became an attorney because that was what my dad wanted me to do. And my passion is in being an architect, or my passion is really in, um, working on cars or uh, designing handbags or what have you. It takes guts. It takes guts for a person to actually go out and live their dream. It's not easy. There's like I said, no shortage of people out there that are going to tell you that you can't do it. And it's a good idea to find people that will give you honest feedback and that'll support your dream and that do believe like, yeah, why not you? Why not now? And then being around people that are on that same journey that can help you along the way and give you as much of a fighting chance as possible. Yeah. Penelope, that's so true. Penelope says, yeah, never take it to a committee, just act. Yeah. I mean, I think that's in a nutshell pretty much it. That's a very good point. Kevin says, I said to someone once years ago that my abuser was a narcissist. And ever since then, my abuser has been manufacturing proof that I'm a narcissist. So that didn't go well. Yeah. That's exactly stuff that they do too. So, focusing on, and it's so difficult because they can be so kind of tit for tat like that, where you can say, okay, well, this is where they were, I don't know, like projecting, right? And then they'll be like, well, but then there was this one time that, you know, you did X, Y, and Z. And they'll continually point out in all the different ways that you're not perfect either. But, and it's hard because there's a kernel of truth to that, right? Like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm not perfect either. I've made mistakes, but I'm not abusive. And like that's the difference. But it's just exhausting. It's exhausting to be around abusive people, abusive or toxic people. Little Miss says, yeah, my family is so in denial and stuck in dysfunction. Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge because people aren't going to see, they're only going to see things from their point of understanding. And it's just really, if they're not ready to see it, they're not going to see it. You know, Amber says, yeah, my parents were insistent that I be a lawyer or a judge. And I was like, no, I love making jewelry. And that's what I am. I'm a jeweler. I love that. And that's the thing too. It's like reverse engineering ourselves, figuring out like what makes you come alive, like what makes you happy, because that's the purpose. The purpose isn't just to take on a bunch of debt and get a decent paying job so you can pay your bills. Like that's not the purpose of life. But that's what so many of us end up doing. The purpose of life is to really find like what juices you, what makes you come alive, and then to I forget the saying, like, and then to surrender to that, like to give your life to that thing, and it can be hard if a person my friend that I was talking to yesterday, she lives in California, and she was saying she just recently quit her job, and she's exploring all these different avenues of what she wants to do. And, and she was saying, she's like, yeah, they're thinking about moving because California is so expensive and it's so hard to, for them to follow their dream when they have all of this, it's just so expensive to live. And, and that's something for a person to consider, like where is that line? Like, would you rather really follow your passion and make half as much or a third as much or even a quarter or a tenth as much? Or would you rather not follow your passion, maybe keep it a hobby and have a job where you make more? Only you have that answer. Penelope says, you are the bizzle as a life coach, Dana. Well, thank you. Hummus says, do you think that at the root of most narcissistic behavior, there is underlying inadequacy or inferiority issues, or maybe abandonment as well? I think it depends on who you ask and what type of narcissism you're talking about. So, from what I understand, the theories around, so like there's two main types of narcissists. You have grandiose, which tend to be more of like the overt. You can see them coming, right? Like they're very grandiose and very full of themselves, and uh, the Napoleons of the world, right? So you have the grandiose ones, and then you have the vulnerable ones. And the vulnerable ones, I think prevailing theory on that is that the vulnerable narcissists may or may not come across as that overt, or they tend to come across as maybe more covert. Well, I shouldn't even say that. They can come across as more outright, or they can come across as covert. But the vulnerable ones, if they get this ego injury, they crumble, and they might stay in bed for a full day. Like it really is about validation and appreciation for them. And if they don't get that, then you'll see like an adult like turn into a child. It's just the most bizarre thing. And pathetic. I mean, it's sad. Like your heart goes out to them. It's such a sad thing to see this person with maybe even three different sides to themselves. So they might have this adult kind of in charge persona, kind of type A go-getter kind of persona, but then somebody criticizes them, or they encounter some sort of, well, I guess basically criticism, and then they crumble, and then they become, so then you've got like the adult, like the confident adult, then you've got this vulnerable side where they just crumble into a child and they can't handle adult things. And then, you also have that kind of abuser side. It's very, very interesting. More of the grandiose type of narcissist, it's more thought that they aren't compensating for feelings of inadequacy or or inferiority. Like the grandiose ones might have tended to be more spoiled as children, and so they have a sense of entitlement because they've always had a sense of entitlement. And so, yeah, interesting. Like they just think the world owes them one because it's always given them one. So a lot of people, when they do experience that vulnerability where they see that adult just kind of crumble like that, it can, it can be heartbreaking, and it can make a person have a hard time leaving. Sort of like, I can't leave this person. They need me. And then things might be great for a while, but then they become an absolute jerk. But if you criticize them, or if somebody else does, they just fall apart at the seams, and you just realize that you're dealing with a very unstable person, and that you're kind of having to fear them and parent them all at the same time. Hope says, I knew a covert narcissist who was very explosive. Yeah. And that could be too. I mean, the covert and overt refers more to how their behavior comes out. So overt tends to be, it's something that's more outright. So, they might be kind of just very extroverted, very attention seeking, very kind of over the top, very theatrical, very kind of all about them. And the covert and their abuse also might be more outright. Like they might be totally okay with yelling at or berating or belittling somebody or even physically assaulting somebody in public. Like they just have no problem. They wear, like, what you see is what you get. They're like, if the coverts are the snake in the grass, the overts are more like the snake on the road. The covert behavior tends to be something that's more hidden or less obvious. And so they might come across as incredibly charming and sincere and humble and all of these things, but then they're not really that way. Like that's kind of all of this mask for them to abuse or exploit other people. And then when that mask slips and you realize, oh no, they've been, stealing money, or or everything that they're doing is just for show. And, kind of what have you, you realize like this, I'm dealing with a person with two very different sides to themselves. And that's just very strange. Oh, wow. Postmodern says, I went into my junk mail today and I found a bunch of emails from one of the narcissists in my life. Yikes. That's always a shock. Are you okay? That's such a shock when to find stuff like that, especially if you like weren't thinking that you were going to. Did this just happen, or when did you find all these emails? Yeah, Bonnie says it's a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Yep. And she says, yeah, so true. These covert ones, you fear them, and then you have to feel like you have to parent them at the same time. You have that so right. Oh, that's good. Postmodern says, yeah, for me, it wasn't so much shocking as irritating. Well, I'm glad it's irritating because, uh, you know, the shock of it can really rattle a person. Oh boy. Okay. Faith and Peace asks, do they always hoover? Well, you know, not everybody's different, they're all different because they're all people at the core. Um, I would anticipate that they would. They generally do because it's all a game to them, and it's sort of like the path of least resistance. So if they know that they can get some source of supply out of a person, they're going to continue going to that person until they can't get supply anymore. Whether that supply is, money, sex, public image, social status, these kinds of things. They'll keep coming around until we can fully cut them off. And oftentimes they can be incredibly, oh, I don't know, I guess persistent would be the word. Sort of like a kid who wants a toy. They just, they don't let up. Like, please, please, I really want it. I'll be good. I promise things will be different. I'll change. I'll be my best behavior. Come on, please, please, come on. And they just keep at it to wear you down. So I wouldn't, I guess, lose sleep over it, but I would emotionally anticipate as much as you can that they probably will hoover. So that way you're not knocked off balance if they do like resurface. You just kind of expect it and you're like, okay, yep, there it is. No big deal. I can handle this. Not gonna let this rattle me. Okay, let's see here. James says, I told my wife we were getting a divorce. That was 3 weeks ago. Why won't she move out? Has anybody been through that? Have you guys talked about that? Kind of what's going to happen? I guess that would be my first question. If you guys had agreed on how kind of expectations, if you're like, okay, I feel like we need to get a divorce. Are you sleeping in different bedrooms? Is one of you on a couch? Uh, can you move out? It's a lot easier for us to move out than it is to try to get them out half the time. To kind of set some understandings of, okay, this is kind of when I think we need to separate and get our own place and all these things. Hope says, my dad is a grandiose narcissist and only shows concern for me when it makes him look good. Yeah, that's a very common thing when people are dealing with more of that grandiose narcissist. Everything is for show. They're very theatrical. Their children, it's all public image and social status. And it's not about what the kids need, it's about what the kids can give for them. Okay, let me scroll down here. Hope says, yes, he likes to show me off. Yeah. James says, yeah, if you want to call it a talk. Haha. 5 minutes into the conversation, she stormed out. Yes, I've been sleeping in another bed. I couldn't sleep next to her. I couldn't relax. Yeah, it's difficult. I think even a divorce that's amicable is still difficult, and there's still all that tension of when you're under the same roof with somebody and kind of knowing that one of you is going to move out. And I think oftentimes it does tend to be, it's a hard it's a big conversation and it's a difficult conversation to have kind of all at once. So I think most people, myself included, when I went through my divorce, it was a series of conversations, of smaller conversations over, I think for us it was maybe over the span of a few, probably, I don't know. I don't even know. Maybe over like 2 weeks or so, trying to just figure out Like, are we really doing this? Okay, we're really doing this. Like, okay, well, what is this going to look like? And how are we going to do this? So I would encourage you to, if you haven't already, to maybe, talk to an attorney or to start talking to some other friends that have gone through divorce. So you can kind of anticipate paperwork and the next, like the legal steps that you're going to need to take. Oh, I agree. Maria says, I find so many unfulfilled parents live through their kids, their unrealized dreams, and so many do that. I agree. And I think for a lot of them too, it's not even necessarily a malicious thing. I think it's, and I think it's also kind of like the evolution, not the evolution, just evolution in general of, their parents did that, especially for those of us in the United States where our parents or grandparents or great grandparents had immigrated over here. And it was all about, they were coming over here to live the American dream, to have this better life. And there was all of this pressure on this next generation to either kind of get an education, and you go to college, you get a good job, and school was your way out. School education was it, getting a good job was it. And in part it was to help to take care of your parents, and so that you could go on and live a better life. So it was very much this expectation for a child of, no, you don't get to live your dream. We need you to help take care of the family, and we want something better for you. Like, we don't want you to become an artist or an actor or something, basically, doctor, lawyer, engineer, architect, maybe a teacher, kind of these kinds of things. Like, you got to make a good amount of money, and it's all about safety and security, kind of a thing. And for a lot of us now, it's more of, we have all those basic needs met. And so when people are having children, it's more of like, okay, I really want my child to become who they're meant to become. It's not about them trying to live out some sort of unfulfilled dream that we might have. It's about them finding themselves. But I think that's a real, like, relatively new concept. Yeah, Kevin says, that's why my mom threatened to kick me out when I said I wasn't going to college. She's really conventional. Yeah. Yeah. It's difficult for a lot of family members to understand people taking a different track. Missouri Cowboy mentioned a book called Silently Seduced about emotional incest. I'll have to check that out. That sounds interesting. James says, I would really rather not be a jerk and force her out, but she seems to be very spiteful and feels entitled to money from me. Yeah, it might be a good idea to get an attorney. I don't know, do you guys have children together? There's going to be a lot of factors that come into play. Like, if you have children together, how long you've been married, uh, who makes more. If she stayed at home, if you have children, if she stayed at home and raised the children, these kinds of things. Oh, good for you. He says, yeah, when I finally told her that I wanted a divorce, the release of stress was amazing. I can imagine. It's hard. It would be hard. It's hard walking around with a lump in your throat realizing like I am so miserable and I can't live like this anymore. And feeling like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And finally to get to that point where you're like, I'm just done. Like, I'm just done. I don't care if it's you or if it's me or what, I'm just done. I just like, I want out. Very freeing. Very, very freeing to just get to that point. Okay. Yeah, Truth Seeker says, James, I know it probably doesn't seem fair, but you can be the one to move out. It may feel great to get away. I would agree with that. I think there's a lot of benefit in just getting in a new environment. If a person can afford it, I would strongly encourage you to just leave as much of your stuff with the other person and move out and get all new stuff. It's expensive, I know, but there really is it just is a very clean new energy with new stuff, new dishes, new sheets, a new bed, a new couch, new TV, all of that stuff. I I can't imagine how heavy it would be to divorce and be the one that stays in that house with all that stuff. But I'm also real like real weird about energy and houses and stuff. I feel like I'm maybe overly sensitive to that kind of stuff. Lisa says, I withdrew from nursing school because my father told me it was a waste of money and that I would never pass. It's ridiculous. You know, the hateful things that people say. I don't get it. I mean, nursing school is incredibly difficult, and there's lots of people that repeat a semester or more than one semester. And there's lots of people that take the NCLEX multiple times before they pass it. But it's just because it's difficult. It has nothing to do. And even if you were to go back and finish it, I mean, it's the people that have to repeat all that stuff over and over again. It's difficult. It's a difficult program and the tests are very difficult. So it's not necessarily them or you, it's the material. Yeah. Kevin says, I've done it. I moved out with nothing but my car and a laptop. Thank God for the Salvation Army. Yeah. Every time I shed something from kind of like a previous life almost is what it feels like. It's just like such a weight has been lifted to and it's so silly. I don't know. I guess if you feel the same way about different objects holding energy, then you can understand what I'm talking about. But if you don't get that, then I probably sound crazy. But even something like getting rid of an old pair of pants or um, a book or getting new sheets or new towels was a big thing for me. And it doesn't have to be, I mean, I think if you can replace these things as you can afford to, it really does make a huge difference. Huge, huge difference. If you have to keep your bed, even doing something small like changing your pillowcases. So if you've heard me talk before, I'm a big fan of getting a color that signifies something to you. So one of the aha moments that I had many years ago after my relationship with Jack is I was feeling so incredibly I mean, used and exploited and unloved. I mean, I mean, you guys can relate. And it was just such this awful feeling. And I remember thinking, Like, why doesn't anybody love me? Like, what's so wrong with me? And and it was very clear. It was this realization of like, Dana, you need to love you. And I think I was getting out of the shower at the time and I was wrapping myself in a towel and it was just kind of my way of giving myself a hug. And later on I decided like I needed to really focus on I needed to love me. Like I had been looking outside of myself for love for such a long time and I had never realized it until that moment. And I went to I think Target and I bought some towels that were red and that was my color to remind myself of I would like red was my color. Like that means Dana, I love you. And it started off with me buying some towels and then it kind of progressed and like I have a red coffee cup you might see me drinking out of every now and again and um just different little items that are red and that was my color. And it was just kind of that reminder for me. I have another friend who went through an abusive relationship and her color was orange. And it was just really cool. So then, she bought some sheets that were orange and some different little, trinkets and stuff that were orange. So if you can find a color that signifies to you that you matter, I guess. And then I don't know, it's just a fun way. Like, and then to get items in that color it can be very therapeutic. Even if they're not brand new, even if you go to Salvation Army and you decide that green is your new color of like self-love and growth and what have you, and you get a plant or you get uh, a green shirt or these kinds of things. Missouri Cowboy says, "My towels have never betrayed me or lied to me or gaslighted me." Well, that's good. That's good. Let's see. Yeah. Yep. Maria says, feeling so scared to leave the few relationships I had was my own prison that mentally killed me for years, holding on to toxic people in situations for dear life. Nothing good comes from that ever. Yes, I agree. I agree completely. I did the same thing and didn't realize it. Like, I did not realize that a situation was really toxic until I could no longer hold on. And by then, things were pretty extreme and I was pretty miserable. One of my clues now, well, I'm so much more in tune with my emotions now than I was then, for sure. But some of the signals for me now is, am I feeling resentful? Am I feeling, how do I feel when I leave that situation or that person? Am I feeling angry? Am I feeling depressed? Am I feeling anxious? Do I feel the need to call up somebody and vent to them? Like these are all warning signals that this is for me that this is a toxic situation. So it can be very helpful to kind of to really pay attention to how you feel and to realize that it's okay to feel good and really frankly life's too short to feel anything less and to distance yourself from those people and situations that drain energy from you. Hummus says red is an alerting, triggering color. Yeah. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But at the time, for me, it was more of like red is love. I don't know. Very, not the most creative thing. It was just red equals love in my mind. I probably would pick a different color these days. Although my different color might be fuchsia, which is probably just as alerting and triggering, but or maybe blue. I love the water. I think I have a lot of things that are blue. Maybe I'd make blue my color. Uh, Jamie says, I feel like such a baby. I can't stop crying. I can't even function today. Well, you know, and that's okay. That's okay. It's okay to have days like that. And sometimes the most healing thing that we can say or do in times like that is just to be kind to ourselves. You're not a baby. Like you've been through a lot and it's okay to cry. Sometimes that's the best thing you can do is have a really good hard cry and just get it out. And you might even find instead of trying to stop the crying to to kind of milk it and to keep it going. And so maybe even watching something that's going to make you cry even harder. I've mentioned this. I'm a big fan of the movie Beaches, which is probably way before your time, but a movie Steel Magnolias, like some sort of movie that just makes you cry, where it just is so cathartic because it just gets all of that emotion out. And then after it's done, you can go take a nice hot shower and kind of settle into bed with a nice cup of tea or something, and maybe spend some time with like a watching something enjoyable, a few minutes of stand-up comedy or something to just kind of even you out, like to just kind of reset things. Listen to some guided imagery or some affirmations and just realize, tomorrow's a new day. Reuben says, yes, finding and doing this is punctuation for the self. Red color, that is why we have tartan. It covers all the bases. That's hilarious. Yes, tartan plaid if you're if you're trying to cover all the bases. I like that. Yeah, Truth Seeker says, I've had to train my inner child that she is safe and we can cry. Yep. There's nothing wrong. Crying is a very normal emotion, especially in times like these. Frankly, I'm always a little bit concerned when people don't cry. And it comes, I mean, there's different phases to all of the emotions and to all of the healing. Most people, when they're fresh out of this, they're either numb or they're incredibly angry. And it takes a person a while before they get to the point of sadness and where they can cry. But it won't always be like this forever. I think just to realize that too. This pain is not going to always be this intense and it won't last forever. And, I would say, most of your best days are still ahead of you. Right now you're recovering. You're recovering and you're healing. And it's just going to take some time. And that's okay. Oh, I love that. Missouri Cowboy's talking about his color. He says, I love lavender, a mixture of blue and red, shades of lavender, like in the sunrise and sunset. Blue and red. Yay. I like that too. Oh, Maria, you are so on point. She says, I was so damn needy, so codependent, so attached, so invested in everyone in my life. The predators fed off of that. When I stopped the above through lots of hard work, I started really living. I hear you, sister. I feel the exact same way. The exact same way. I didn't, and I don't know about you, but I didn't even realize it. I thought I was being a good friend and a good person, and this is just what good friends and what good people did. And I had a very, and I think too, kind of given my background, I had worked in like crisis and trauma, pretty much since the age of 20. So for 20 years. And like what hit my radar for extreme, it took a lot for me to get to that point because I was around chaos all the time. So it really didn't register as such in my personal life when it really should have. And uh I stayed in a lot of like really toxic friendships and toxic relationships for way too long, way, 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 way too long, and was so needy and needed them, and um, hung on till I couldn't hang on anymore, and was in, like you were saying, invested in everyone. I really had the mindset of like, I kept people in my life based on how I felt about them versus how they treated me. So it was sort of like, "Oh, but I really love him," or, "Oh, but, she's a good like, she's a good friend, but she, like, wasn't a good friend at all," right? Like, "Oh, but I really enjoy her company, even though this person totally treats me like crap a lot of the time." And when I realized that I needed to shift that, I needed to really have people in my inner circle based on how they treated me, as well as based on how I felt about them. Like it needed to be both. That's when my life really began to change. Because to keep a person in your life just because you love them, like that's not a good reason. They need to treat you right. So that was just a big aha moment for me. And getting to the point where I could show myself love and take care of myself and kind of, the whole taking care, like parenting your inner child kind of thing has been huge. Oh my goodness. Cluster B, that's a cute name. Cluster B Freeish says, I basically became a recluse after my discard of a 20-year marriage. I developed large blisters on my feet and went to an acupuncturist who looked at my feet and asked if I had been crying a lot. I was shocked and said that my crying was affecting my lungs, and I'm afraid to cry now. Oh my goodness. Well, I would encourage you to not be. I know easier said than done, right? But I think when there's that intense crying, like that sobbing, there's well, first of all of our major, let's just say you were really damaging your lungs. Like you were crying so hard that you were causing, you know, scar tissue in your lungs. All of our major organs regenerate like every 7 years. So just kind of know that. So whatever damage you've done, it's healing. Don't even worry about it. But uh so I guess that kind of aside, our body has an amazing capacity for resiliency. And it is important that we get that stuff out. And um, I guess I'd be more concerned about you holding that stuff in than you getting it out. Sort of like, you could also make the argument that when a person goes to the gym, and they're like lifting weights, that, they're breaking down muscle, and then it breaks it down, but then it builds it up stronger again. Or even like when I do my live streams, it's really rough on my throat, and by the end of it, or even during them, I kind of get hoarse. So you could probably say that it's affecting my throat, but you know, the next day I drink some tea normally, and the next day I'm fine. Yeah, our body has amazing capacity for resiliency. That's very true. Very true. Penelope says, "We are born to cry. It is our first autonomous act, or autonomous, I should say." Autonomous. Put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. Autonomous act. Yes. And Missouri Cowboy says, "Yes, tears are God's way of washing the soul." That is so, so true. And I never thought about that before. He says, "Tears are saline, which is what doctors use to wash and clean a wound." That's very true. Very, very true. Huh. Deanna says, "I want to leave my narcissistic husband. He sent me an email saying he wants a divorce. He thought I would buckle and be scared, but said, uh, and be scared, but I said I would get a lawyer. He said, 'Oh, I thought you would respond differently.'" Yeah, I like that. Good for you. Good for you. It's always scary when a chapter closes, when that door closes, but another one really does open. It really, really does. Yes. CB says, "We know when we deserve better. I remember thinking I'm in a relationship and I feel lonely. The confusion was a sign. In my endless internet searches, I learned I didn't do anything wrong." Yes. Oh, you hit so many good points in that. I- If you're in a relationship and you're feeling lonely, that's a problem. That's a big problem. And even that alone, even if there's not abuse going on, and I can so relate to that. That's the worst feeling when you're in a relationship and you're like, I would rather be alone. Like, I'm lonelier with this person than I would be if I was just spending time by myself, because at least I'm not on eggshells or things are tense when I'm by myself. But when I'm with this other person, we're sitting in, like, there's so much unspoken that the silence is holding, you know? It's just tension and confusion. So feeling lonely when you're in a relationship is a sign that something needs to change. Feeling confusion is a big sign that something's, generally manipulation, is going on. And if you're Googling somebody else's behavior, then that's also a sign of manipulation. Big sign that something's going on, because normal people don't start Googling their partner's behavior to figure out what they're experiencing. Yeah, Maria says, "If you identify with my former severely codependent ways, healthy narcissism really is the way out. Even for a long while, be all about you." Yeah, it is. This was another conversation that I had with a friend of mine, that same friend, yesterday. And I was trying to explain, I was telling her about self-care and, putting yourself first and getting your needs met and realizing that you matter. And she's like, "Well, like, what do you say when people tell you, oh, that's selfish?" And my response is, I don't care what they have to say. Like, they don't get to vote. My life's not a democracy. You know, I don't have children. So Like, I don't, I put my wants and needs first because then I can be a better friend, I can be a better partner, I have more to give to my, to my life. But I've got to make myself a priority in my own life. Whereas before, I would put myself last and I would sink myself in order to save the relationship or in order to save them. And that's really not healthy. So it's not being selfish. It's not being selfish by um, taking time out to take care of yourself and to meet your wants and needs in life. Like there's that balance. That's all part of self-care. It'll probably feel really selfish at first because it's something that a lot of us are not used to doing. But it's a game changer when, one of my big things is or I had mentioned this a while back, but it was a big thing for me to turn my phone off at night and to tell people basically like I'm not going to be I can't be at people's beck and call 24 hours a day, so I'm going to start turning my phone off. And I would turn it off, from 10 to 6. And then I got to the point where I'm like, this is really nice. Like I like I like not living a life of reaction to my cell phone. And so now I normally keep my cell phone off all the time, and then I look at it when I want to look at it. And that's been a game changer. And another game changer for me has been carving out, like really guarding my writing time. It's very easy for me to get caught up in stuff that's going on in the Facebook group or with emails or with the podcast or with YouTube or all of these different things. But it's like, I've got to get my writing time in every single day. Like that's a priority. That's a top priority right now. And this other stuff is still going to be there. And I've got to just kind of work around it. But it's a game changer when you start making those things a priority. And it's not self-care. And you don't have to ever sink yourself to save somebody else or to save a relationship. So, okay, I think yes, are at the close to the 3-hour mark. So let's end. We'll do a guided imagery thing. Somebody left a comment last week. It was so funny. They said that they really wanted the guided imagery thing back, and they were upset that I didn't do it. So I promised them that we would do that again. We'll do guided imagery this week. Yes, Maria, you're so right. Let me touch on this real quick and then we'll do that guided imagery. She says, Dana, you can't be your friend's therapist. Relationships of any kind cannot be therapy projects. We are not free therapists. This changed my life. Adult Maria was no longer going to try and save others. I agree completely. Another big game changer for me was realizing that the definition of friendship was mutual trust and support. And I realized that I had a pattern of a lot of friendships in my life where um, there was not that sense of mutuality. And I still have people there's so many things I really liked about them that I really wanted us to be friends, but frankly, they were all struggling with their own codependency stuff, and the pattern that would play out is and I guess I was in the same boat, is whenever any of us would date somebody, we would lose ourselves in that relationship. All of our friendships would fall apart. When that relationship with that guy would fall apart, then we would start calling, our friends basically needing a therapist. So we would call a friend needing a therapist because we were in crisis. And then once that crisis blew over and we started dating somebody again, we would just disappear. And So then the healthier I've gotten, it was the realization of I don't necessarily want friends that need a friend. I want friends that know how to be a friend. So I don't want friends that only want me in their life when they're in crisis. Like I want people, and so now I actually have friends that'll call me and when they're not in crisis and they're like, "Hey, let's go hang out. Let's go do this." And it's so much more based on mutuality. It's not based on whoever's in crisis. And that's been a very big eye opener for me, realizing, oh my gosh, I'm guilty of doing that same thing and making it a priority when I'm in a relationship to not make that my whole world, to make sure that I'm still spending time with friends and my writing and different hobbies and um, making them a priority and not just thinking like, oh, I really enjoy them, but then only calling them if I'm in crisis. So yeah, I agree. That's a total game changer. And it's changed the dynamic that I've had with the YouTube channel and with the support group too, because when I started all of this, it definitely was coming from that kind of knee jerk, I think codependent place of panic of, oh my gosh, I get it now. And I really need other people to get it too. And feeling like like I was responsible for rescuing people. And now it's shifting over to I can't help anybody, but I can empower them. And I want to empower them. And I don't want people to think that I have all the answers. I want them to realize that they have all the answers and to empower them to find their own strength and inner wisdom and to turn inward. And that's been such a game changer in all of this too. So, it's just a never ending process of figuring stuff out about ourselves. Standing Firm says that's my problem is rescuing. Yeah. It's difficult. It can be a very knee-jerk reaction for a lot of us to want to dive in, but it's not helping. It really the magic happens when we can empower people to realize that they have it within themselves, that they really, really do. Cluster B Freeish says, "Isn't trying to rescue others just a diversion from taking care of ourselves?" I think it for sure can be. I think a lot of us don't even know what that means to take care of ourselves. Like the old me would not have thought that at all. I didn't know. I was so out of alignment with taking care of myself and what that even meant that to me it felt unnatural to not take care of other people. I really felt, and I think a lot of nurses and a lot of teachers, people that have this personality that get into these fields, therapists and social workers, it feels like a calling. And we tend to be really good, like really good caretakers. But a lot of it's that unaddressed codependency, but we don't realize it. It feels like a calling because in many ways it is. It's calling us to resolve that issue. Yes, I agree completely. Truth Seeker says, as far as love goes, the Buddhists say that if your heart pounds and your hands shake, it's not your soulmate. If it's your soulmate, you'll feel calm, no angst, and no agitation. I agree completely. I think it's that way with any extreme emotion. Feeling like something's your calling, feeling like a person's your soulmate. Those and expecting this emotional intensity that tends to not be healthy, but it feels really, really healthy. But what it is it's pulling us because there are these unresolved, deeper issues there. And I agree completely. When it's your soulmate, you feel completely safe and secure and comfortable. And when you're following your passion, it feels enjoyable. You feel like you're in the flow, but there isn't this compulsive drive. And that's, again, that's been something that I've really had to, it's been a journey for me with doing all of this, because I've always known that I've been into advocacy for many, many years, and it really has felt like a calling. I mean, there were so many days where I was working at the shelter and I would just leave, and I just knew in my bones, I'm like, this is what I'm meant to do. And but now that I'm doing it, it's like, okay, I need to do this in like a healthy way where I'm not, it's just, I don't know. It's a interesting line to kind of walk. I think about that too often with the live streams, and trying to kind of check my motivations for stuff, and the support group too. I don't, it's just like with the live streams, asking myself, well, I want to share details of my life with people because I think it can help them to see, just because people don't talk about this stuff. And I think it can help to see the thought process of somebody else and hear other people's stories. But there's that line where it's like, I also don't want to turn this into like a therapy time for me either. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want to make sure that it's me not like misusing this I don't know, but it's this platform. Same thing with the support group. I had the realization, oh, I don't know, a few weeks ago, that I wanted, um, I heard of a lot of other groups that were switching their groups to being paid. And um, that was when I really began thinking about stuff, because it's like, that would be great if we had funds coming in and we could, pay admins, and because it's time consuming, and there's a lot, and it would be great to have more training and all of this stuff. And um but I really feel in my bones that it needs to be free. And and then I posted in the Facebook group, and I kind of got like some snarky comments from people like, well, I would hope it would be free, and this is just and people don't know like how much time we spend in there. But it was just kind of really minimizing how much we were doing for other people. But it was interesting because it made me really check my uh, kind of where I was coming from with things. Because I was like, okay, Dana, do you really want this to be free, even if people don't appreciate it? And the realization was, yeah, like, it's not about them appreciating me or about what I'm appreciating what we're doing. It's necessarily, I mean, it's nice that people do, but I'm not doing this to get appreciation or validation or to play the role of a martyr. Like, I'm doing this because I feel like it's the right thing to do. Even if people, you know, which happens, like, tell me that they hate the group or that they don't like the way I'm running it, or, whatever. Just, I don't know, learning, interesting stuff that comes up. Okay. So, Maria, we should do a video. I really enjoy everything that you're saying. Very insightful. It would be fun to do a call-in show, I think. I don't know how to do that. I would like to do that, I think. In theory, I would like to do that. I don't know how that would really pan out. So, okay. So let's end with a little guided meditation of sorts. I do like that too. I kind of got away from that last week because I just kind of make them up on the fly, and I didn't know if people liked him or not. So we'll do it this week. So Maria says, "Oh, Dana, thank you. Tears. Thank you. Yeah, you've got a ton of insight, and I think it would be good to do a video and to share with other people if you're open to that, like a lot of your journey and your aha moments." So if you're interested in that, email me and we'll go from there. Dear Dana at thriveafterabuse.com. And then put in there Maria. Not to say everybody else has amazing feedback and input too. Please don't take that in any weird way. But okay. So with that said, let's just, that feels good. Like, let's just decompress for a little bit and just breathe and relax. Oh my gosh. So close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. Oh man. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath in. And let it out. And take a deep breath in. Breathing deep to where you're filling up the base of your lungs. And exhaling through your mouth. We'll do one more deep breath in through your nose. And out through your mouth. And just let your body go as limp as you possibly can. Just let that tension drain out of your neck and your shoulders, down through your arms, down through your fingers, just right out into the floor. You feel all of the tension just draining from your chest, feeling your chest and back loosen up as that tension just keeps going, moving further, lower and lower into your body, into your thighs, into your legs, to your calves, out through your toes, just into the floor. That tension is just moving through you now. Take another deep breath in, filling up the bases of your lungs. And exhale. A nice deep exhale. And imagine filling your body with a bright, healing light. And maybe that light is your color that you were thinking about before. So, whatever is your self love color, perhaps imagine that light being that color. And that light is beautiful and it's peaceful, it's happy, it's love, it's joy, it's bliss. And it's filling, just flowing and filling your body up. It's healing every single cell that it touches. Bringing peace and healing throughout your whole body. And when you can feel that light filling up your body completely to where it's moving down your arms and into your fingers and down your legs and into your toes, so full, just so full of that amazing healing light. Realizing that you are light. You are an energetic being. And taking some time to send some of that light and love to other people in your life or that are online right now or that you've cared about in the past. And just giving them a big energetic hug, just letting them know that you care. And making sure to come back to yourself and giving yourself a big hug because you matter and you deserve it. And when you're ready, come on back and open your eyes. I love that. Truth Seeker says yes, sending light and love where it belongs. Hug. Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Doug. Doug is, I just get the biggest kick seeing you. Uh, so thank you for a beautiful message and a generous live stream donation. Much appreciated. He says, have a great couple of weeks. Light and love all. Namaste. And True Seeker also with a nice, generous live stream donation with some nice, really sweet words that says thank you and keep sharing your gift of healing with others. Thank you so much, you guys. I really appreciate that. And, live stream donations, of course, never expected and always much appreciated. Oh, well, Doug, it sounds like you're in the right spot then tonight. To be getting those energetic hugs from other people. Oh, Doug says Panda also donated. Let me scroll up. Let's see. Oh, you sure did. Panda Power says, it's not a lot, but I appreciate you and the team so much. Light and love. Oh, I appreciate it. It's flattering to me that total strangers would even donate. Like, it means a lot. So thank you. And thank you for your kind words. CC Gray says, thank you, Dana. My first live stream, still healing. I guess it never ends. I appreciate you. Well, welcome. I hope you enjoyed the live stream, and we hope to see you back. I'm not going to be here next week, but I will be back the week after that, just taking a little mini vacation of sorts. Oh, I love that. Missouri Cowboy says, group cyber hug and some crazy glue for Doug's bucket. Thank you, Doug. Yeah. Maria says, I love it when Dana giggles about Doug and his donations. I love the giggle, always makes me smile. You know what it is? It's Doug. Well, Doug used to be here all the time, but it's his little icon. It's his little person with that little green, I don't know what that is, like a flying carpet or something. It just cracks me up I just think it's so cute. And of course, I really enjoy Doug too. It's sort of like peekaboo because he just kind of like hops out of nowhere. I just get the biggest kick out of it. I'm easily amused. Don't judge. Okay, so with all that said, I think we've gone over. I don't even know because YouTube changed their format, so I'm lost. But with that said, you guys have a fantastic rest of your night or your day, depending on where you are. And thank you for joining us. We normally do this 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Wednesday nights, except for next Wednesday. And I will talk to you guys later. Take care so much. And as always, you are not alone. You are not crazy. And you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care, and I will talk to you soon. Okay. Bye.